So today, kiddies, we're going to be checking out Realme's fresh new GT2 flagship smartphone. Just 400 quid here in the UK, despite the fact it rocks some pretty premium specs, including the same main camera sensor as this here Pro model, which I've already fully unboxed and checked out here on TechSpert. Gamers and Netflix fans and everyone else should be sated by the gorgeous AMOLED display, the stereo speaker setup, the Snapdragon 888 performance, got a 5000 mAh battery with 65 watt super dart charge support, and yes, that 50 megapixel Sony IMX766 sensor with optical image stabilization. In short, sounds like a bit of a cracker, especially if you nail it for that early bird price of 399 quid. But enough banging on, let's whip the Realme GT2 on out of the box, compare it to the Pro, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, as always, what do you get in this lovely little box? You've got yourself one Realme GT smartphone, one ruddy huge 65 watt super dart charger, bit of Type-C USB cable action, and yes, you do get yourself one protective prophylactic case to keep your Realme GT2 looking all snazzy and fresh. Und das ist das, all your sort of standard stuff, no filler or anything. Alright, so let's start with the design, and in my left hand is the standard Realme GT2, in my right hand is the Pro model, and good bloody luck trying to tell the difference between them. There's a couple of ways of doing it. You've got slightly skinnier bezels on the Pro, especially noticeable down beneath the display compared with the Realme GT2. Flip to the edges, a couple of obvious differences there as well. You've got individual volume buttons on the Realme GT2, whereas it's one solid volume rocker on the Pro. You've also got a metal frame here on the Pro model, hence the aerial bands, whereas it's a plastic frame on the standard GT2. And then here on the back ends, they are practically twins, not helped by the fact that, of course, I've got them both in the paper green variation, right down to the random scribble of whoever actually designed these phones. And both the paper white and this here paper green model of the Realme GT2 smartphones features a bio-based polymer arse end, which is nicer for the planet than your usual plastics. However, despite Realme insisting that the Realme GT2 sports a paper-like texture on the back end because they've basically roughed it up, it does still feel rather plasticky to me. Certainly in comparison with rival smartphones around this price point that have a glass back end instead. But you know, hooray for saving the environment, you know, baby seals and all of that bollocks. And if you're not a fan, the Realme GT2 also comes in steel black and in some regions a rather lovely titanium blue if you'd rather not have the same textured finish. And no, you don't have an IP rating for water and dust resistance here on the Realme GT2, just as with the Pro model, but it seems absolutely fine in a drizzle, so you know, a bit of splashing should be absolutely fine. And as for that screen, while the Pro model had Gorilla Glass Victus up front, this is Gorilla Glass 5 here on the Realme GT2. You do have a pre-installed screen protector on there as well. So not quite as shatterproof, so if you are a bit of a butterfingers, you might want to spend a bit more cash and upgrade to that Pro model, but otherwise should prove pretty hardy. Certainly if you leave that pre-installed screen protector on there, then you're not going to get any scuffs or damage. And on the software side of things, no difference whatsoever between the Realme GT2 and that Pro model. You once again got the latest Android 12 OS, and slathered on top of that is RealmeUI 3.0. Now, even with Realme's launcher sat on Android's face, if you will, you've still got a pretty stock Android sort of vibe here, complete with your apps tree. You can drag down the notifications bar and all those great Android 12 features that we know and love. So for instance, if you change up the wallpaper, then in the personalizations section, you can actually set the UI colors to match certain hues found in that wallpaper. Drag these wee balls about until you've got exactly the colors you want. Et voila, job done. Plenty of other stuff in here you can personalize as well. You've got lots of different always on display options, again, all fully customizable. And because you don't have a dedicated notifications light here on the Realme GT2, you can set the edge lighten feature up instead, which again just causes the edge of the display to glow every time something pops in that demands your attention. So there's loads of extra little bits like that chucked in here. If you go into special features, for instance, you've got the kids space if you want to actually give this phone to a child and stop them from spunking all your cash on a Digimon app or whatever it is the kids are actually involved with these days, or using up all your mobile data by streaming Mr. Bloody Maker. And on the security side of things, you've got your in-display fingerprint sensor here on the Realme GT2, just as with the Pro model, and it is once again an optical effort, so it just takes a basic 2D image. But again, no issues whatsoever with the usability, only when I've just washed my hands and my fingers were a bit moist or something. And as a backup, you've also got face recognition on here as well, so just quick tap that power button if you can't use your fingers for whatever reason. And like the Pro, the Realme GT2 also supports up to 256 gigs of storage, although once again, no microSD memory card expandability. And when you first boot up the Realme GT2, once again, some of that valuable storage space is taken up with bollocks like LinkedIn, but thankfully you can just quickly and easily uninstall it. You've got a few others, PUBG, pre-installed, TikTok and things like that as well, but again, you can just shift it all if you don't want it. And certainly nowhere near as obnoxious as many MIUI phones from Xiaomi, for instance. Now, both the Realme GT2 and that slightly snazzier Pro model sport a 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED display, but there are differences between the two. For instance, you've not got a WQHD Plus super crisp resolution here on the standard GT2 as you do on the Pro model. The regular Realme GT2 tops off at Full HD Plus resolution, that's 2400 by 1080. But all the same, media fans will fully enjoy the Realme GT2's visuals. They're still nice and crisp, certainly perfectly fine for the likes of Netflix, Disney+, YouTube. As far as the colours go, I've noticed there's slightly warmer hues on the Realme GT2 Pro versus the GT2 on the default colour settings, but you can dive into the display settings and tinker with the colour output. You can have more saturated, more vivid colours, otherwise you can dial it down if you prefer. And because they're both OLED panels, you can expect super premium output from both of these. So a nice sharp contrast, really deep blacks, wide viewing angles, and on the top brightness levels, both of these smartphones absolutely fine for outdoors use. Certainly for around this sort of £400 price point, you're going to be struggling to find anything better. You know, the likes of the OnePlus Nord 2 and quite a lot of other rivals also have gorgeous OLED displays. But personally, I'd say the Realme GT2 can match them all. And again, if you dive on into the display settings, plenty of options in here like the eye comfort mode, and the screen refresh rate can be tinkered with as well. It's on auto by default, but you can also bump it all the way up to 120 Hz, the max level, full time if you like. And that is a match for the Realme GT2 Pro. And just like the Pro model here on the standard Realme GT2, you've got a stereo speaker setup. Hot tech shenanigans to recap on, and I'm not going to lie, I am unsurprisingly hanging like a giraffe's clag nut, so let's just crack on with it. And once again, pretty loud and clear output if you just want to kick back with a bit of YouTube or Netflix or whatever without plugging in. I say plugging in, there is actually subtle headphone jack action here on the Realme GT2, as with most Android flagships these days. So it is Bluetooth all the way, unfortunately, but that wireless connection seems to hold up absolutely fine for streaming to speakers and headphones. And on the performance side of things, the Realme GT2 Pro model rocks that Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset that all of the big premium flagship phones in 2022 have got packed inside of them. Here on the standard Realme GT2, it's the older Snapdragon 888 chipset, so once again a flagship, but a full year older. But as you can see there, not a huge gulf between them, certainly as far as Geekbench scores go. And in terms of the everyday shenanigans as well, I found that the everyday experience on the Realme GT2 is just as lovely. Apps load straight up, no worries, no hanging about at all. And of course, if you're a bit of a gamer, then you'll find the Realme GT2 can certainly do the job. That Snapdragon 888 chipset could ably handle the likes of Genshin Impact, so again, even the most demanding fare like Genshin here on the Realme GT2 performs admirably, even when you bump up the detail settings to the highest levels, jack up the frame rate to 60 FPS, I still found that it was a almost completely judder-free experience. The occasional little stumble here and there, but overall highly playable, that's for sure, even if you do want those ultra slick graphics. Screen sensitivity is perfect. The visuals are of course stunning on that gorgeous OLED display. You got the stereo speaker setup if you don't want to rock a headset. And of course the Snapdragon 888 can get a little bit toasty when it is under pressure, but thankfully the Realme GT2 does offer up some stainless steel vapor chamber action to help keep things as cool as possible, and it definitely does get a little bit warm once you've been playing for, you know, a good long while, but I didn't find that this actually throttled the performance at all. And of course you've got Realme's gaming mode slapped on top of there as well, so you can bump it up to performance mode, which is what I did for Genshin Impact. Just make sure all the resources are dedicated to that game. You've also got the basically leave me the f alone mode as well, so you can just not be disturbed as you're getting your Genshin Impact action on the go. And of course I got the model with 12 gigs of RAM, so that certainly helps to keep things moving along smoothly as well. And because it's the Snapdragon 888, you've got that built-in 5G modem as well, so no issues on the connectivity front. And here on the Realme GT2, you've got the same battery tech as that Pro model as well. It's the same dual cell 5000 milliamp capacity battery crammed inside of this plastic shell. And certainly as far as the battery life goes, that battery percentage just seems to trickle down no matter what you're up to, unless you really are getting a good bit of Genshin on the go, in which case, yes, it does plummet a bit faster, but you'll certainly be able to get hours and hours of screen on time from a full charge here. The RealmeUI seems pretty energy efficient on the whole. And then when you do finally run out of juice, well, no worries, because you've got support for that 65-watt super dart charge tech. So again, plug it in, this thing will be powered up again in like half an hour or so. And I like the Pro model. The Realme GT2 does not support wireless charging, but then to be fair, at this sort of price point, you would be struggling to find many phones that do support that anyway. Let's finish up this unboxing and comparison with a squint at the camera tech, and there are some differences as far as the camera hardware goes, but both the Realme GT2 and that Pro model sport the same Sony IMX766 primary sensor with optical image stabilization built in. And this is a really popular camera sensor as found on lots of premium rivals like the Oppo Find X5 Pro for instance. So this means the Realme GT2, just like the Pro, very capable across a range of conditions. Certainly if you're snapping in good light, and you'll expect natural looking colors, nice crisp detail packed in there as well. Not 50 megapixels by default because it does use pixel binning, but still plenty of fine detail in there. The great thing about that IMX766 as well, especially with the built-in optical image stabilization, is you get nice, sharp, clear, blur-free photos even when you're shooting a moving subject like a cat or a wee person. Portrait mode results are very good as well with that rear snapper, especially the dynamic bokeh, really liked that effect, very jazzy indeed. Sometimes the Realme GT2 can get a little bit confused about what you're actually trying to shoot a photo of, so for instance if someone's lurking in the background, it might try and focus on them instead, but that was only a very sporadic issue. And even when you move indoors, quite ambient lighting, you still tend to get pretty sharp, pretty good looking photos. Colours do sometimes take a slight hit as far as the accuracy goes, but still very, very strong. And certainly for £400, this is one of the best smartphone snappers you'll find. And even in low light, the Realme GT2, like the Pro, isn't really phased. You'll still get some pretty strong detail in there. And again, colour accuracy not bad at all, if not quite up there with the likes of the Pixel phones. And one of the only sacrifices you're making if you downgrade to the standard Realme GT2 versus the Pro model is the ultra-wide angle shooter. You no longer get a secondary 50 megapixel sensor for that, instead it's a more basic 8 megapixel sensor. So while you get the same sort of pulled back view, you don't get as crisp detail and the colour accuracy takes a dive too. And then the final lens here on the Realme GT2 is just your bog standard basic 2 megapixel depth sensor. You don't get a microscope macro lens as you do here on the Pro, which to be fair is a bit of a gimmick anyway, and might amuse a small child for a matter of minutes, but that's probably about it. As for your video, well, no real changes there whatsoever. Here on the Realme GT2, you can once again shoot up to 4K resolution footage at either 30 or 60 frames per second, just as you could here on the Realme GT2 Pro. The only real difference is that the Pro also offers an 8K resolution video mode if you want to absolutely destroy your phone's storage. Still not really sure what the point of shooting 8K on a smartphone is, to be honest. And with video set to 4K at 30 or 60 frames per second, the results once again pretty strong here on the standard Realme GT2. Not much difference at all compared with the Pro. Once again, got nice, fine, sharp visuals coming through, reasonable color accuracy. Audio pickup is strong from all angles as well. Only thing is, if it is a bit of a gusty day, then that breeze is picked up by the mics quite clearly as well. But even again, in more ambient light when you are shooting video, you tend to get pretty solid results as well. So overall, if you just want something to snap, the family, the pets, all that good stuff, then the Realme GT2 stands up well. And then last up, if you flip around to the front-facing cameras, you've got a 16 megapixel selfie shooter here on the Realme GT2, so a bit of a downgrade compared with the 32 meg effort here on the Pro. Although in my eyes that's actually an upgrade because that means less wrinkles and fine detail. It's the Sony IMX766 sensor, if that makes any difference to you, and it's a pretty good one actually for shooting your selfies out and about. You've got a good strong portrait mode on there for getting a good bit of bokeh action. And if you're shooting video using that front-facing selfie cam, you can shoot up to full HD 1080p footage, and hopefully it's not so noisy with the wind and stuff that you can't actually hear anything I'm saying, and that's a cheeky girl. And there you have it, you lovely buggers. That in a nutshell is the fresh new Realme GT2 versus the Realme GT2 Pro. And as you can see, the standard model should be more than enough smartphone to satisfy the majority of users. And you've got the same great main camera, you've got the same slick RealmeUI software experience, gorgeous OLED display, stereo speaker setup, all of that jazz. In fact, some of the few flaws here on the Realme GT2, the lack of a headphone jack, the lack of expandable storage, are also flaws found on the Pro model. So I'd say certainly, if you're intrigued, then definitely jump on it early, get that early bird price of 400 quid here in the UK, absolute bargain for that, and a solid rival for anything out there like the OnePlus Nord 2. So that's what I reckon anyway, but it'd be great to hear from you guys down in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a bloody lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!